What's the most legendary thing that happened in your school? Jeff jumped off the roof of the chapel into a dumpster filled with empty cardboard boxes. 50-foot drop. 8x8 dumpster edit. We are gathered here today to mourn the inbox of a Kralopede edit 2. Some background. Twice a week at our school, the junior and senior guys were on garbage/recycling duty after lunch. We'd gather all the garbage bags and recycling from the classrooms and offices. The building was a school attached to a church with offices and a sort of community center. It wasn't a huge building, but it was pretty big. We'd take all the garbage and trash out to the dumpster, which was set next to some sheds behind the building. That's how it all started. Jeff jumping off a 10 to 12 foot shed into a dumpster full of cardboard boxes. We'd laugh, roll the dumpster out to where the garbage guy could get to it. Someone else rolled it back when garbage was collected. One day Jeff climbed the backstop of the baseball field right near the dumpsters. That was a 25 to 30 foot drop, I think. He made that one look easy. Then he dropped in from out of a tree that was probably about 40 feet. Finally, about a month from our graduation, he told us his plan. He had to break into the crawl space above the chapel, accessible by a padlock trapdoor on the 3rd floor of classrooms, then climb up through the attic space of the chapel and onto the roof. The chapel parking lot sloped sharply by about 7 to 8 feet, which is where the 50-foot drop comes in. We saved boxes for weeks, set them up in the dumpster, put it in the parking lot about 15 feet from the chapel wall, and watched him jump. I'm from a small town in Indiana. That means two things. Nobody really knows what you're talking about when you say where you're from. Here in Indiana, you're either from around Fort Wayne or around Indianapolis. You never see fights break out. Maybe a little slap fest, but that's it. The worst I'd witnessed before this was this one girl dumping Gatorade on another girl. Nothing exciting. But this day broke both stereotypes. We were put on a hard lockdown that day, meaning we had to sit in class until the teacher released us. We missed the entirety of 3rd period, sitting there in 2nd period while our teachers got bored and started watching cat videos with us on YouTube. Typically, a hard lockdown means a shooter got in the school or something, but nope. That apparently wasn't what was going on. A senior, who was over 18, got in a fight with a freshman over a sophomore girl, and then they pushed each other out a faking window. We were on the news. You don't say you're from around Fort Wayne anymore. Nowadays in Indiana you can get away with saying we're from that town where the kids went out a window. Edit. I just need to clarify some misinformation on this. Sorry about everything. Yes. Some people also say I'm from around Chicago or I'm from direction, Indiana. My point was, you'll never hear a guy tell you they're from Wabash, Indiana. Second, I seem to have miscalculated the impact of the window shatter. It was on the Fort Wayne news station, so only people in Northeast Indiana know about it. I'm not going to confirm the location, so please don't try to send me your guesses. Finally, we don't really say we are from the place where the kid went out the window. Usually, if you do happen to say the name of your town/high school, people will respond with, isn't that where those kids went through a window? 2 years ago, the app Yik Yak was growing in popularity at my school. Maybe about 25% of the student population had it, but since it is anonymous, people started roasting other people through it. Just as people were no longer using Yik Yak, our sheethead principal heard about people roasting other people. He made an announcement talking about Yik Yak and digital citizenship. Naturally, everyone re-downloaded the app, and anybody who didn't previously have it downloaded it as well. Word quickly got out that some teachers got Yik Yak as well and were monitoring it. People started to post stuff like fight in the art hallway and laugh as a group of 3 teachers would speed walk by then towards the art hallway, on to find out there was no fight and see the next post fight in the cafeteria. This went on for 45 minutes until people moved on to better pranks. I'm pulling the fire alarm next period. Our sheethead principal misread this as firearm and called a lockdown on the school, which lasted for 80 minutes, and there were cop case all around the school. Later that night, my school was on the news, and Yik Yak is now blocked within 100 meters, I think, of any school in my school board. TLDR, my school got Yik Yak banned in my entire school board. Edit. Maybe it wasn't just my school board. Maybe it's all of Canada or something. I'm really not so sure. In my school, I get off the bus, get in a long line to get through doors, which go to metal detectors, then it goes into the lunchroom. All rooms branch off their point. Well, one day they shut the doors. No one knew why, but many people trampled over each other to look through the windows, which were large. I didn't feel like dying ATM, so I stayed in the back, on my computer, playing Smash Brothers. We go to a tech school. Everyone has comps. People up at the windows were screaming at the top of their lungs, cheering something on point. They reopened the doors and let us in 30 minutes later, finished the metal detector scan, and told us we were in lockdown. Lockdown lasted 3 hours. Fine. No class. Played comp games. We then went to our classes. What happened was the day before a gang shooting occurred outside of school, but that was somehow the cause of the fight at our school. A large fight, 10 people per group. 5 ice groups, knives, 1 gun somewhere. Point. The legendary part was many principals and cops were involved in breaking it up. Many people got body slammed to the ground, but Dr. Black, one of the principals, randomly got hit with a muffin out of nowhere. This was the butt of jokes at the school for a long while. Point. To wrap this up, our school has a dank memes subreddit over at r/memes. In case you think I'm lying. Point. Edit. My most upvoted comment is about muffins. Late to the party, but worth a shot. Point. At our school, UK, on the year 11's final day of the year they would do egg and flour day. Essentially, pelting the lower years with eggs and flour. This was a long-standing tradition at my school, and went back decades, as you can imagine, with parents understandably annoyed at the sight of the kids coming home covered in mess. The school received a lot of complaints. Because of this, the school clamped down on it in the past 2 to 3 years with huge punishments for those caught taking part. To get around this, the year 11s typically moved the location to somewhere off grounds, where students could be ambushed on the way home. Typically the local shops anyway. It was our turn. We were the year 11s now. We wanted to make our mark. A group of around 10 or so of us got together towards the end of the year and started brainstorming. It took us about a week to come up with it, and it was perfect. Or so we thought. Here was the plan. The school was recently going through some renovations, so a few things were moved around, and a few areas were off limits, including one of the fields. Now this field was where we would go in the event of a fire drill. Because of this, the fire drill point was moved to the tennis courts. Great. Why was this great? Because the tennis courts bordered on the local woods. The very edge of these woods were bordered by incredibly dense growth that was very difficult to see anything through. Between the growth and the tennis courts was a 10-foot fence, and just behind the growth was a pathway. Perfect. Point. So the plan was set. We will send a guy inside, get him to pull the fire alarm, then send a barrage of eggy flour death to the unsuspecting lower year peasants beyond the fence. Point. Skip forward to the day of the event. We sent Tim in to be the man on the inside. We were ready and waiting in the woods, armed to the teeth with pancake ingredients. We waited a long time. It must have been an hour and a half at that point. We'll come back to this later. This was before mobile phones, so we had no contact with the man in the inside. An oversight. We sent in Christian to find out what was going on. And we waited. Not long this time. 20 minutes later the bell went off. It was happening. Point. First we would only hear the piercing ring of the bell. A minute later, the loud chatter of many prepubescent voices. It got louder and louder. The tennis court was filling up. Students were getting into their lines. We waited for the perfect moment to strike. A few more minutes later, things quietened down. We started to hear the teachers shooting out names, going through their registers. This was it. Time to strike. Point. With the students now silent, it was time to unsilent them. Without saying a word, we unleashed. Cartons of eggs were emptied into the air, over the fence, and down onto the underlings to the most satisfying crack splits. Flour baggies were spilt and tossed over, leaving trails of white smoke, before landing with a puff, and filling up the area with clouds of potential biscuit. Point. The screams. Oh, were they glorious. The complete sound of chaos. It started with silence, shock as to what was going on. Then the fear set in. Nobody wanted to be egged. The tennis courts exploded into a mass of running kids, dodging yoke, trying to get out of the way. Teachers trying to find out what was going on, barking orders and trying to calm everyone down to little success. And that was it. Within 60 seconds we had exhausted our ammo and it was time to retreat. Laughing hysterically and celebrating our accomplishment, we melted back into the woods and fell back to our meeting point. It was done. We were legends. Now let's fast forward a week. Remember Tim? The guy in the inside who took too long pulling the alarm. Turns out he didn't pull alarm because we noticed they were all covered by CCTV. Another oversight. When Christian went in, he didn't bother looking and pulled the first alarm he came across. He was called into the school a few days later and ordered to give a list of names. It was either he did or prom would be cancelled that year. Can't blame him really. I probably would have done the same thing. Those who were on the list, the choice was either 8 hours community service in the school or be barred from prom. We all took the service and spent the day with the school caretaker doing absolutely fuck all. Point it was great. 10/10ths would egg again. I went to a professional training high school. We had to choose a major for our senior year, and on Tuesday and Thursdays, we would spend the entire day in classes involving our chosen major. Strange, yay. Only lasted for a few years. Now it's just a regular magnet school. Whatever. Here's my story point. My tech teacher was cool as fuck. He'd give us a project on Tuesday morning, and we'd have until Thursday afternoon to turn it in. If we were done early, have fun on the internet. If late, well, that's a strike on your grade point. Most of the students busted us on projects on Tuesdays, so we could watch Jerry Springer on the TV cart in the back of the room on Thursdays. Me and 2 other kids would play Warcraft 2nd on the network computers we set up. Seriously, this teacher didn't give a fuck as long as our work was done. One Thursday, one of the students in my class was flipping around the in-service channels the school had. Sometimes they would play a movie on it for some class. Guess what? Born point hard faking core black on black. Born point student quickly turned it down and turned the TV from the line of view of the teacher. Teacher still heard it. He came over, coffee cup in hand, looked at the class, looked at the TV that wasn't turned off in time, looked back at the class, took a sip. First off. Anyone offended? Class, no, keep it low. If someone comes in, turn it off. Background. 4 years ago, went to a small Christian high school. Open campus accessed from the outside, not one big building entered through inside. This school was hell. To attend we had to sign a document that let them breach our rights to privacy and they could go through our phones, texts, backpacks without any probably cause. Drug testing students randomly, paid by our tuition. Drug dogs on campus that never caught anything in my 4 years and paid by tuition. Every class loved to hate the school. It was like the establishment anyhow. Had these group of 4 kids in my high school, couple years older than me, come to school one night and wipe sheet everywhere on the windows of our classrooms and inside of the door handles. Teachers got real pissed at that clever move. One teacher was so infuriated he says to our class, fact the senior class absolutely enraged. Anyhow they cancelled prom and our student pride week unless one of them came forward. For at least 2 weeks no one came forward and no one knew if it was even a senior prank or just kids from elsewhere. Every day at the end of school our principal would come on and reiterate his blank threats and we all just laughed. I was a sophomore, so I didn't care about prom. Point after a couple weeks the principal cancelled graduation. Parents were outraged and school quickly stood firm that there'd be no graduation and everyone would just be mailed diplomas. Eventually one of the group came forward and snitched. One kid lost a scholarship for D1 sports, another was the class president, and the other 2 were expelled. Best part about it is we deemed them the perpetrators, which remains the most infamous nickname of our school's history. Point this story is real, 100% true. Shout out to the perpetrators that were as fed up as all of us. Elementary school, candy got banned because some kids brought in these chocolate bottles full of booze and our principal didn't like the idea of hammered 2nd graders. Also, someone flushed my brother's entire lunchbox down the toilet. Kind of an accomplishment, now that I think about it. Point middle school was lame, so I'm skipping that part. High school, band teacher got caught schmanging a student. Her diary, which detailed how good it felt to have a real man touch her, ended up on all the online news articles about the story for like 2 days, until it got taken down. I, female, was alone in rooms with that teacher a bunch of times during piano class, so that's cool point we weren't allowed to wear it due to large numbers of gang members in my school. Problem: red is also our school color. Solution: we could wear red on Fridays, because it's okay to be in a gang on Fridays. Senior prank my year ended up being a bunch of kids spray painting the school and smearing peanut butter everywhere. Kids with peanut allergies either got sent home or had an allergic person open all the peanut buttery door handles for them and tried not to touch anything else. No one really liked that prank point. Kids got caught having sex on the floor of a hallway by security cameras, which, considering all the nasty shit that ends up on the floor of high school hallways, is pretty unsanitary to say the least. Point edit cause I forgot this one. For chemical we were supposed to do some kind of end of the year group presentation on a chemistry related topic of our choice. Our teacher didn't feel it was necessary to approve topics, since we were the smart honors kids who would never do anything bad. One group chose how to make crack cocaine, which, as it is indeed chemistry, totally counted and is also why I get to say I learned how to make crack in high school honors chemistry. Now topics have to be approved. Point TLDR, public school is great. When I was in middle school we planned an all-out food fight. We had a date planned and a secret code word for everyone to know it was on. And lastly, the day of the food fight was chili day, because we didn't plan on just raising a little hell. Point it all started out with a kid throwing an orange peel at the lunch monitor toward the very end of the lunch hour. Even this act alone was unheard of, as this was a school in white middle class suburbia. Everyone was shocked at the sign of aggression, but things escalated when the kid then proceeded to argue with the monitor. This caused everyone to stand up and look to see what was going on. Even those furthest from the incident wanted to know why everyone was standing. Little did we know that this was just the beginning. At the moment everyone stood, that a girl proceeded to flip over the salad cart and scream the infamous code word, "Chunky Monkey." All hell broke loose. It looked like a war zone. Food was everywhere, in all directions. Chili was dripping from the walls, lettuce was sticking to windows, the floor was covered in milks and other unknown juices. People were covered in an unholy combination of sauces, gelatins, greases, and unknown substances of which man was never supposed to discover. Most people ran, some people cried, a few simply basked in the insanity. Then, as quickly as it started, everything stopped and became quiet. I don't quite remember what I did after that, but I do remember going to class regularly, as if nothing had even occurred. It wasn't until the next day that we learned of the fallout. The teacher started the day by trying to shame us by telling us how our food fight made it in the city paper. Of course, instead of shame we felt an immense pride and camaraderie. We felt a great respect for our 15 fallen food warriors who were fined and rumored to be arrested from the events. Unfortunately the legend never carried on. The school made a great effort to never mention it to following school years, and my fellow students had awful storytelling skills. It was not 6 years later that my youngest brother had never even heard of the story while he attended the same middle school. But it didn't matter to me, for the memory will never fade from my mind. That day, we were the stuff of legends, and that's all that matters to me. TLDR, in middle school we staged a luncheon coup of all things orderly in the cafeteria. We attacked on chili day. Our plan was intricate and swiftly executed. War broke loose. Food bombarded the once clean lunchroom. Brothers in arms were punished severely. We made the paper. We became legends for a few years, then faded out into a fond memory, never to be forgotten by all who witnessed our victory. Not sure if this is legendary, but one day we got to school, and the power was out. Our school was kind of crappy, so we didn't think too much of it, until about 30 minutes into our first class, and the power still wasn't on. The principal came on, and told the teachers to hold us until later. They had just got rid of whiteboards, and got these smart boards that you couldn't draw on. The teachers are all just letting us do whatever we wanted, since they couldn't do any of their lessons. We could tell the power wasn't going to come on anytime soon, so we were trying to just leave. Some kids just bolted, but most people were just waiting for the okay to leave. Finally, the principal comes on and tells us we can leave if our parents came and checked us out. Most parents, work, so very few kids could actually leave. We were calling our parents. More kids started just walking out, and everyone, including teachers, was pissed. Basically, this one teacher would not let anyone leave, even for the bathroom, until the office called them down. This girl snuck into the closet and climbed out the damn window. People from other classes could see her on the damn roof, and that, of course, led the principal to have to get a ladder and get her down off the roof. Not sure if it was legendary, but it was pretty funny. In 10th grade, I broke a kid's arm in self-defense. In truth, he tried to kick me after a mutually mean-spirited conversation went on too long, which I do regret. I grabbed his leg, threw him to the ground, and gravity plus concrete broke his arm. But as far as the school was concerned, I broke a kid's arm. Now that by itself wasn't that remarkable. I went to a Quaker school. Violence was strictly forbidden. Add to that the kid's father was a rich lawyer. I was looking at no less than a week's suspension. All I cared about was my transcript. I wasn't Mr. Popular by any means, but I was well liked and respected throughout school, teachers, and students. Knowing this, I went around, being a present mind, and asked if anyone had witnessed the confrontation immediately after it occurred. I then asked these people if they would testify as to what they witnessed, and nothing else. Unfortunately, but not really, my suspension started before I could plead my case. The first time I met with the principal, he basically lectured me and told me the other kid said I beat him up. This made me smile. I went home, and the next day the principal met with the witnesses I had talked to. They all independently said the same thing and totally contradicted the other kid's BS. My suspension continued for another day, but there would be no record of it on my transcript. So in the end, I broke a kid's arm and got a 3-day vacation. 2 days later I aced my test and scored the winning point in Varsity Ultimate. Outside of getting laid, that was pretty much a perfect week. In middle school, our class was known as the loudest and least well-behaved class of all time. It didn't help that our math teacher was extremely laid back and was usually, especially in the beginning, part of our not so ideal behavior. We never did anything awful, but I know, had the principal ever seen what actually went down in class, he probably would have gotten fired. My best example of legendary was probably during a math mock exam, which at our school works exactly like an exam. Don't know how this goes down in other countries. Making any noise whatsoever is forbidden and would get you thrown out. But our teacher allowed us to blast music from our computers, use Skype with the teacher's Wi-Fi, and order McDonald's. You see, one of the girls called their grandma and asked if us could bring Mickey D's, so she brought for the whole class. Keep in mind we were 15 at this point. Other notable stuff with that teacher was during one class we convinced him to come with us to some fast food store nearby and pick up some burgers. He got on his motorcycle and went with us. Another time he interrupted class to tell stories about him driving from the police etc. After a while things cooled down and word got around, so he had to stop doing what he did. I don't think he was popular among other teachers. I still have no clue how no one heard all of the crazy from our classroom. It's 3 years since I graduated, and he gets mentioned every time I meet any former classmates. I can't wait for the class reunion in 10+ years. Legend has it that a year before I started school, the senior prank was switching the daily news tape that plays on all of the TVs in the school with a born tape. There was a riot at the end of my freshman year where fights broke out all over campus. I was in geometry class when suddenly the door slams open and 2 students tumble in the room beating the shit out of each other. There was a roar coming from outside, so we all left the room to see a riot of students. The amphitheater was filled, and the principals were driving around in their go-kart trying to break up the fights. They got surrounded, and the students started to pick up the go-kart. I think their plan was to toss them down the amphitheater steps. Cops were called, and we were forced out of the campus. The rest of the school year, 2 days left, was cancelled. There was the legendary week of bomb threats. Some kid was prank calling the school saying there was a bomb on campus. So we had to evacuate the school every time this kid called and wait for the bomb squad to tell us the campus is clear. It was fun because we all got to play around on the field. There was a student going around to all the classrooms that had their doors open and spraying a fire extinguisher inside. It freaked everyone out because the room would get foggy and there was white powder everywhere. It was unclear at the time what it was, and people thought they were just poisoned or something. Had to evacuate the rooms and wait for the fire department to tell us it was safe. Oh yeah, almost forgot. Some kid brought a gun to school, but it was stolen. So they set up a fight after school was out. The time comes for them to fight. The kid that stole the gun goes to take it out of his pocket and accidentally shoots himself in the leg. Haha moron. I managed to get the caretaker, the head of science, my science professor, myself, and 4 paramedics quarantined at the local hospital for about 4 hours, as well as getting pretty much every emergency service in the state on premise, complete with guys in white suits. I'd found a small sample of cesium-137 on the side of the road out the front of the local technical college, TAFE. In Australia, on the way to school. We'd recently used this material in our senior physics classes, along with our unreliable Geiger counters, and some cloud chambers, and it was encased in about an inch of lead, so I was fairly happy that it was relatively safe, and knew that my school should know how to dispose of it properly. As such, I took it to my science teacher, and handed it over, before heading back to classes. Halfway through class, I get pulled out by guys in white suits, who proceed to scan my bag for radiation. I had to ditch all the good born behind the chemistry labs, and then take me to the lab where a bunch of other people were congregating. Now, remember when I said we had unreliable Geiger counters? Well, it turns out, they would work correctly 50% of the time. The other 50%, it would tell you that you'd just been nuked. Guess which one it was when they decided to test the sample. As such, just to be safe, 000 was called 911/112 for all the non-Australians, and the sheet storm commenced. No one knew what to do, so everyone arrived. EPA, hazmat, fire, ambulance, police, SEs, pretty much every emergency response unit in the state, including some over 300 kilometers away, made their way to the school. As mentioned, I was carted off in the back of an ambulance with my physics teacher, and the head of science was carted off with the caretaker. When we got to the hospital, no one knew if we were radioactive or what to do with us, so we were quarantined in the ambulances for a few hours until they determined what was going on and sent us all home without any further tests. Turns out, we were exposed to more radiation from the basalt in the mountains during our year 11th ski trip, where one kid broke his back right as we were getting ready to leave, but it certainly makes for a killer story. Probably not the most legendary in my school, but still pretty good. Sold somebody catnip and then beat him up. I guess I sold a kid a bag of catnip for $50. Now before I get a ton of hate, this kid was pretty terrible. I would call him a poser, but that is probably too nice to him. He would take great pains to make it obvious to everyone he smoked weed. He would try really hard to fit in and be cool, simply by the fact he smoked weed. We would have been cool with him if he was just chill and be the regular dorky kid he was. Hell, I loved dorky kids, was a big nerd myself. But no, he had to be the biggest coolest pothead ever and let everyone know he was the biggest pothead of all. I did not single-handedly come up with the plan. Like 4 to 5 of us got talking and said, hell yeah, let's see how great a pothead he really is. Will he buy this? So he bought it, smoked it, and got so high. Guys, but you are happy with your purchase? We are done here. Glad to help. Well, a day or two later he was making friends the only way he knew how, and they were like, no dude, I don't want to smoke your catnip with you. He got really pissed and demanded his money back. Okay, I felt a bit bad, was surely a dick move. Thing is, since 5 people had made the plan, 5 people shared the spoils. We bought beer with that money right away. So I told him I will give you 50% back, the rest is already gone, and I think the missing 50% will be a good learning experience for you. Already smoked himself stupid, doesn't need more drug money. I will give you the $25, then we are done. That's all I can do for you. Go tell your mom or the cops if you need any further resolution. Sounds good, we make the deal. Well, 2 days later it was not good enough. Give me the rest of my money, or else. Okay, I already told you how it was. We are done. Go report your botched weed purchase to the authorities actually, or else what? He tells me we are going to fight if he does not get the $. Now I'm not the greatest fighter, never actually been in a real fight, but I'm pretty quick and have studied some martial arts. And this kid, no question. Getting threatened by him is like getting threatened by a baby duckling, kinda cute and adorable. Okay, well if that's how it has to be resolved, I guess I will fight you. I will be around here after school. See you there when you're ready. It probably actually took a few days to get the thing set and planned, so I wait there for a long time, and finally I'm like, he is not showing up, no skin off my back. It was prob 45 minutes to an hour after I was expecting him. As I get in my car to leave, he punches slaps my window. Oh hey, you actually made it. You really want to do this. So we fight. My entirety of the fight is just blocking him off. I shoulder dodge more, blocking shots and telling him, go home kid. Okay, good enough. You happy yet? Essentially I was not fighting at all. I eventually get a good opportunity and take a medium to light punch at the back of his head. How did I have an open shot on the back of his head? I dunno. He is just that great of a fighter. He did have a punch that I blocked, but kinda failed blocking, so it got through to my face at like 10% power, a mild irritation. His nose starts bleeding because the punch to the back of his head. So now I'm just blocking saying, okay you're bleeding, let's all go home, we done here? Finally he is finished, and we end the fight in a draw. Sure. I never heard about it again, never got busted for fighting, or for selling catnip. Went to a charter/academy school where you picked an arts/communication major, so we had a whole assortment of kids in freshman year. We were put on lockdown for a drug search. During this time, one kid in my grade level apparently brought some acid with him to drop off to school with friends. Cue him taking all the hits he had on him at once. The legend varies between 2 to 4 hits. He proceeds to be taken to the hospital. Parents put him into rehab, and we never saw him again. In my junior year of high school, we were placed on another lockdown. A bomb threat was seen on LiveJournal. Tells you how old this was, and was reported to the administrators. It was a stupid joke, but post-Columbine, so the guy behind the LJ post was suspended from school. Cue the free dude's name, #1. The other free dude's name movement was when an underclassman that same year Ike got busted with a scale, baggies, and the like in the back of his trunk and was suspended. My peers enjoyed movements like these. After I graduated, I still had several friends who were seniors at the time and would tell me about the goings on at the school. One of the art teachers made a paper mache panther, our mascot, that would sit on top of the trophy case and you saw it when you entered, left, and went to lunch at school. The seniors at the time thought it'd be cool to take the panther, put it across one of the toilets in the men's room, and take a sheet on it. A lot of the people I graduated with even heard about it well after we left. Haha. I don't care if this gets buried. I need to tell the story of Tex. He was an exchange student or something like that. He was originally from Texas. This was during our senior year of high school in our grade. He quickly became one of the cool kids. I always remember he would piss a history teacher off by calling Massachusetts Massa sheets and blame it on his southern accent and get away with it. On our last day of high school we were mostly burning down the clock except for my math teacher who wanted to cram as much algebra down us hoping some of it would stick. P.S. It didn't. When we hear a loud fax call trailing down all of the hallways, everyone in every classroom got out looking down the hallways. Our classroom was closest to the action as I see Tex, naked as the day he was born, streaking down the hallways. We all have a good laugh and the teachers get us all back into class except Tex. He decided to skip the rest of school following this incident. What he forgot though is it was getting near the end of the day where parents were coming to pick their kids up. Parents with younger kids in their cars. And Tex streaked right past all of them. Last I heard parents got pissed and sued him, and now he's a such offender. Poor Tex. TLDR. Kid streaks down school and streaks past other parents with younger kids, and becomes a such offender. When I was in 10th grade on a day our school was having athletic week, we were invaded by a group of mischievous students from another school, who were also having their athletic week. It was like a scene out of the movie 300 except less gruesome, and took place at a Catholic school. Point background. Our school was located not far from the National Stadium. In fact, there was a pathway at the end of our school property that led right to one of the entrances to the stadium. That particular day, we were out of uniform, so anyone who hadn't actually seen the intruders enter the property didn't realize that they weren't students of our school. I was one of the few who did. About a dozen of them, who we were later told were intoxicated from drinks they had snuck into the stadium, ran onto the property from the pathway, which led into one of the school's courtyards, and accosted then attacked some of the senior students. The fights unfolded in the center of the courtyard, and as more of our school's students noticed, more joined in, either to attempt to break it up, or to beat up on the intruders. I clearly remember some of the older male students launching attacks with portable wooden chairs from the classrooms as they charged into the center of the courtyard toward the brawl. Everyone else just stood by, either cheering or in panicked tears. After 5 minutes of craziness, the fights were stopped and the police, an ambulance and parents of the intruders were called to the school. Our students cheered as the intruders were taken away in cuffs. Our principal later called a school assembly and surprisingly praised us for defending our peers and teachers. Definitely one to remember. Probably a little late to post, but when I was in 9th grade we had a chemistry class that once a week we would go to the lab and mix water and salt and other stupid chemical reactions. When we got there the teacher had already written down, on the whiteboard, the name of the experiment we were going to do that class, and at the end of the class the whole group would leave the lab, so the next group would come in. I don't exactly remember what the title of that specific experiment was that day, but it had the word clock on it. So we finish the class and everyone is leaving, but me and my friend took a couple of extra minutes to clean our beaker, so when we finished the classroom was empty, not even the teacher was there, because she had to walk us to our classroom. Private schools, whatever, and as we are about to leave I tell my friend that it would be funny if someone erased the letter L on the word clock. As we were leaving he quickly erases the L, and we storm out giggling, as any mature 9th grader would. As we were leaving the lab me and my friend were laughing and saying how funny we were, but the next period after that we had already forgotten about it. A couple of periods later we had recess, again, private school brawl, and we hear that the students from the lab class after us were being punished and did not go out to recess. Apparently the teacher didn't notice right away. When the next class arrived, she was explaining the experiment. When everyone started giggling, she demanded to know why they were all giggling. She looked at the whiteboard and furiously stormed out the classroom. She came back with the conduct coordinate. She was the one you were sent to when you misbehaved. They were lectured and asked to confess who did it, but of course nobody in that class did it, and that if none confessed they were all going to be punished. So they were point. When me and my friend heard what happened to the other class we looked at each other with an oh shit face and swore to never tell anyone we did it, but we had the laugh of our lives. TLDR, erase the letter L on the word clock from a whiteboard. The next class was punished for it. My high school had a very strong insane clown posse presence. We had a lot of juggalos that wore ICAP/psychopathic records shirts and accessories, and some even wore facer paint on occasion. A popular accessory was a necklace with a big hatchetman pendant, which is ICAP's mascot. Like the name suggests, it's a silhouette of a guy running with a hatchet in his hand. A majority of the juggalos had one, and buying one was sort of an initiation thing, so it was important to them. So as you might assume, a small handful of juggalos were frequently getting in trouble and causing problems. I'm not sure when the tipping point was, but the high school's administrative staff decided to ban all hatchetman necklaces and images because it promoted violence and gang-like behavior. What happened next was actually pretty epic and, in my opinion, was one of the most legendary things I remember from high school. Instead of stirring more shit up and causing more trouble, the juggalos got political. They created a petition as an ultimatum to have our high school's mascot, a cartoony, marching patriot/soldier carrying a gun with a bayonet on the end that had been a part of the high school's history for at least 50 years, to be altered so that he was carrying a flag instead of a weapon. The argument was perfect and completely justified. A vast majority of the student body supported them and signed the petition, me included. The petition was presented to the president of the school, who agreed with them, and the administration actually spent the money to modify the mascot artwork on sports uniforms, murals, printed materials, and everything else. The Juggalos still had their hatchetman band, but I feel like they still won in the end. It was a pretty monumental point in my high school's history, and it was cool to watch it go down. We were all Juggalos that day. Here's the mascot with the flag. If you follow the flagpole in his hands, you'll see that it gets thicker between his hands, which is what's left over from the bayonet point. TLDR, Juggalos banded together and made my high school alter their mascot. Sulfuric acid spill. I'm not cheating you. A chemistry teacher's Ed was climbing the stairs with some acid for an experiment when he accidentally dropped it on the top of the stairs and spilled it down the flight of stairs. The janitor tried to mop it up, but the mop was eaten by the acid, at which point the school was evacuated and the whole school had to stand outside for an hour while the fire department decided what the hell to do, most of us without our backpacks because we were always told not to grab out stuff during drills. They sent us home early. We weren't allowed to go inside, so most of us were pissed when they sent us home cause we didn't have our wallets, schoolwork, food etc, and had to wait until the next day to get our stuff. Mostly it was funny and surreal, but I had a plate of homemade cookies I was gonna deliver to my boyfriend from another school, and they had to wait in my locker until the next day. I was really excited to surprise him with them. Also, my favorite teacher had to give me bus money because I had no way home without my wallet, which was in my backpack in the school, and my parents never answer their goddamn phones, so I couldn't even get them to answer during an event like this when something actually happened. Though the school did tells us to always grab our stuff during drills from now on, and we got to leave like 2 periods into the school day. That was kind of cool. My junior year I was in Spanish class and we weren't doing very riveting stuff, so I decided to ask to go use the restroom, basically walk around and kill time. As soon as I left the room I heard some commotion up on the 2nd floor, so I was like, I'd better go check that out. So I went up and turned the corner. It was lunch period. We rotated, so everyone else was still in class, and 2 girls I guess had been walking somewhere with their lasagna lunches and saw each other and had some sort of WWE smackdown right there in the hallway. Imagine a hot mud wrestling fight, except they were trashy and the mud is school quality lasagna. I'm the only one in the hall to witness, and I just stand there frozen until finally classroom doors open and teachers come running. Got to see the school's hottest teacher run in a sweater, and also got to see our soccer coach literally slide tackle in viral lasagna slip and slide and grab one girl with his arms and the other he had grappled between his legs, feet locked. That was about the time I got sent back to class, where no one believed me till word spread during class change. Also had a kid get wasted before a basketball game. During a timeout he tried to go use the restroom and busted through both teams' huddles and went into the hall and just pissed in the corner. Cop saw him and cuffed him to a chair in the principal's office where he then proceeded to throw up all over her desk when she walked in. Suspended for 10 days and came back to about a quarter of the senior class making one of those tunnels for him like you made after youth soccer games. Anytime from then on when he asked a teacher to go use the restroom he got hell. He was a legend among students and teachers. My friend and I convinced the majority of our school, faculty included, that a teacher got kidnapped. The teacher in question was a rather large and not very well liked individual, and she also happened to coach debate. At the time of the event she was coaching a small portion of the debate team in a different state, a fact that very few people were aware of. During the course of that fateful day, the entire school went on lockdown due to a bomb threat. My friend and I photoshopped a fake Twitter post from the school district stating that the school was on lockdown due to the teacher in question being kidnapped. We sent the picture to a few of our friends, and within minutes it had spread throughout the school. To improve upon the believability of our story we also photoshopped a fake news article, adding more details to the story. Among the details added were a very muscular assailant driving a rented U-Haul truck. The pictures spread like wildfire, and within half an hour they were in every group and being spread outside the school. Parents were calling the faculty and other teachers even texted the missing teacher to see if the rumors were true. The truth eventually came out, but that day will go down in history as the day that everyone believed the large, disliked teacher was abducted in a U-Haul truck. Man, I hope this doesn't get buried. In high school, there was a football game called Senior Night, where they would honor all of the seniors on the football team, and in the band, they announce your name and you walk the field with your parents. Whatever right point, well, I was in the band. It was known by all that Senior Night was the night during the halftime performance, where you could goof off, and pull pranks, etc. The upperclassmen had always talked about, on Senior Night, we are gonna turn around and march the entire show backwards. The antics they talked about were always ridiculous and far-fetched. What the class of 2015 didn't realize is this. Although they talked about the things they were going to do, nobody ever did them. Our band is a state marching contest caliber band, in a state where band is as big as high school football. The directors take it super seriously, and the kids do too. So the Thursday before, head director holds all the seniors after rehearsal, and gives us a huge warning, as he did to the seniors every year prior. We take the field. All hell breaks loose. People are marching backwards. People are switching instruments with their friends. People spinning in circles, playing random songs. During the slow movement of our show, me and the other seniors in the drum line took our drums completely off and started dancing. Like ballerina improv, dancing to the music. During an epic part of the show, the two kids at the very center of the formation pulled out lightsabers and had a lightsaber battle. These were just a few of the things people did. When it was all said and done, we got lectured and told it was the most embarrassed the head director has been in his entire life. Each one of the assistant directors had a word of disappointment with us. They asked where we got the idea from, and we said upperclassmen. It was traditional. It happened every year. And they mentioned that no class has ever done anything on Senior Night. We all sat there and thought about it, and none of us could think of an example of someone actually going through with what they talked about doing. At that moment, it settled into my brain that the class of 2015 will forever be the legends of that band program. Varsity QB forced the JV team to jump from the field bathrooms. JV QB got his hands shredded by the gutter when he tried to bail amputation. My sophomore year, the senior prank was crickets in the vending machines and chain/superglue on all the doors so no one could get in. Junior year, principal tried to cancel senior prank day, so the seniors started the biggest food fight of all time. Absolutely no one was spared. Senior year, different principal tried to cancel senior skip day. We still skipped. Senior prank that year was thousands of black balloons. Admins allowed the balloons. They didn't know they were filled with glitter and confetti. The following day, the previous graduating class marked every window with huge ticks made with spray paint. They were very detailed. Kittens fell out of the ceiling once. The girls who stole my DS and phone got into a fight at lunch and I got to see them both get tased. The hottest teacher punched the ugliest teacher in the face for groping a student, and the student and hot teacher are married now. There was a school shooting threat made on Twitter and Miss Base on a Friday. My mom made me go to school anyways. On Monday, the kid who made the threat was caught. It was a kindergartner from the PK8 school behind us. She was caught during lockdown trying to sprint across the field that separated the two schools with a backpack full of dollar store water guns and threatening to kill her older sisters and their friends. With plastic water guns. 2 pairs of teachers got married, then divorced, then switched partners and married again. Our football team won state once and hasn't shut up about it since. Late to the party, but reading these has brought back memories. Middle school, I had moved late in the year in 8th grade. Shortly after starting school, 3 girls were coming back from a suspension. They had been caught drinking vodka in the bathroom. One of them quickly became, and still is, 8 years later, my best friend. High school, in no particular order, the school bathrooms, the girls, anyway, all had black marks on the toilets. I didn't find out until the next year they were cigarette burns. None of the stall doors had locks. I found out this was because students had been caught having sex and doing various drugs in the bathrooms in previous years. A few months into freshman year, the mirrors were removed from the girls' bathroom. The bathroom windows were sealed shut. According to rumor, this was to keep students from smoking in them. This stopped no one. Going to the bathroom was a nightmare for anyone with asthma or a sensitive nose. A student we lovingly called Fat Larry broke a chair at lunch by laughing too hard. His weight and the movement were too much. A friend of mine came to our pep rally in a morph suit, tutu, wig, and fairy wings in our school colors, which were green and gold, though to the students and even the school, gold meant yellow. He also spray painted his car the school colors during lunch, and left behind several chairs that had drying paint on them. A different friend, who was a large, bearded freshman who could pass for a 27-year-old and looked like Thor, came to school on Breast Cancer Awareness Day absolutely dripping in varying shades of pink. He had even custom ordered pink name brand shoes. I overheard a few students in my year talking about him, calling him gay, and I was quick to inform them that his mother had beaten breast cancer. He became a legend in school for his pink shoes, and later for dressing as Thor for Spirit Week. We had no air conditioning, and in summer, at ATF outside, it felt like 100 in the building. The school was a U-shape, but with a very long middle hallway. We had 2 large fans on either end of the hall upstairs where it was hottest. As a senior prank, someone threw glitter into the fans. This happened the year after I graduated, thankfully. A year after that, the new school building had been constructed, with a multitude of fights, spanning all 4 years of high school. There are still some floating around on Facebook and YouTube, I'm sure. The 2 most memorable for me were the one that broke out between a very tall, very heavy-set black girl and a shorter, skinny white girl. The skinny girl swung wildly, while the other girl held her by the hair and backed her up clear across the cafeteria. By that point, people just sidestepped the chick fights at my school. The second was, while I was leaving lunch, heading to my last class. I would meet my boyfriend and chat for a bit as both our classes were close by right around the corner from the cafeteria. I heard the shouting from behind me. Before I could turn around, my boyfriend grabbed me and tucked me between his body and the wall to keep the wall of people from crushing me. To this day, I have no idea how I stayed so calm. It couldn't have been more than a few seconds, but it felt like an eternity, watching over his shoulder as these 2 lanky skater dudes threw the most sissy punches I could imagine. The teachers were held off by the crowd of students that had gathered to watch, and my boyfriend was now pinned against me, holding himself off me by his elbows on the wall. I got to watch the glorious moment one of the stoner chicks got fed up with being held up and just chucked something at the 2 kids, and it bounced off one kid's head. In his distraction, the other guy managed to land a decent punch, knocking out a tooth. It also distracted the students long enough to let the teachers through. My teacher for the class I was heading to saw the whole thing and asked if I was alright, before patting my boyfriend on the back for saving me. Finally, the time I went off on another student who was harassing one of my favorite teachers, I managed to turn her argument into a debate that silenced the entire classroom for several minutes while I explained to her why she was wrong, followed by why fighting me would do her no goodie. As I had seen her fight and wasn't impressed, and how to counter her in a fight. After about 10 minutes, she shut up. Later in the week, someone else in the same class was picking on me, and the same girl stood up for me. I didn't find out until my senior year that, had anyone actually laid a hand on me, I was verbally harassed and threatened quite often, that I would have had a virtual army of students I barely knew backing me up, all because of this argument I had in freshman English class. So I'm a senior in high school, and one of my friends in the grade below me made up this dance move last year that he was trying to get to go viral. It was similar to the whip or the dab in the sense that it was very simple to pick up on and could work in any current hip hop song. Essentially you would put one hand in front of your face and the other hand out in front of you. We thought it was too simple and kind of dumb at first, until they made a Twitter account for it, and tons of kids started sending in videos to it of them doing the move. The account got over 2,000 followers in about a week, and someone suggested that we do a flash mob in the huge hallway that connects the 2 buildings of our high school. Our high school has an enrollment of about 2,100 kids. So we set up a huge speaker between first and second period in the hall, and kids started doing the dance to the delight of the crowd of over 1,000 kids who gathered around. The staff were not happy and had talks with all of the kids involved, but that had no effect on the kids. The Twitter account starting tweeting different locations in the school where they would meet to dance between periods for about a week straight, with kids doing backflips in the middle and the staff was going insane trying to figure it out. After they looked at the security footage they suspended me and 7 other kids involved. The day we all served our suspensions the Boston News came to our school and did a story on the move and over 1,000 kids went over to be in the shots. It was pretty crazy and will go down as the greatest movement at our school. Okay, so this is really late, but worth posting. So last year around February, a bunch of fights taking place at my high school. Fights weren't too out of the norm, but after 5 fights in 2 days people were talking about it. Well, after about a week about 15 fights happened with about 30 kids involved. Towards the end of it rumors ran rampant. I heard shit like people bringing in knives to shank, axes being smuggled in, to a guy bringing in a sword, none of which happened. It was quite faking literally insane. Word spread around the county and the thing was dubbed a fight week. It even made the news. The story behind all the fights were multiple gangs had a beef and just went after each other. About 10 people were arrested, 1 punched a cop, and dozens were suspended or expelled. The whole event made the school look awful, when in reality major fights never really happen. This year we have like 5 new security guards, on top of the 3 we already had. My school's rival even had their own fight week trying to copy my school. However, nothing really happened like it did at my school. Not putting my school's actually name for obvious reasons. Some of the numbers might be off, as the school never said anything about who and how many people were involved, but the numbers were big. Context story. There was this one kid with whom I went to high school, and he was a bit special. A running joke among my friends was that he looked like episode 3 Anakin Skywalker, but with freckles. This kid was mentally unstable, and he's the kind of kid that people are scared that he would shoot up the school. This kid could be set off by a number of things, such as when he goes nuclear when someone tells him to connect the dots referring to his freckles. Anyways, I wasn't there for it, but in a freshman grade 10, in Alberta, high school is grade 10 to 12, class some of my friends were teasing that kid about his freckles, and he stood up, grabbed his desk, chucked it across the room, and ran out of the room, while making whale-like sounds. Turns out he was crying. Another possible entry could be the time when I ran around on the school roof on the first day in the chemical lab in grade 11, while the teacher was out of the room. I almost got suspended, but they called it an error in judgment. That one spread through the school in less than a day. I was great with words, so I could get away with a lot of things. Most of the crap that I said was in English class. I made lots of jokes in English, although they were less effective once I took 30 to 1 after 32-2. The worst punishment I ever got in English was the teacher telling me to go for a walk. That happened occasionally. My freshman year of high school, we had a class Facebook page specifically for our year. We would post events and questions for classes and stuff like that. Well, midterms come around in January and everyone was required to take a religion course. Private Catholic school, and no one ever took the religion courses seriously cause they never mattered on our transcripts for college. Anyways, because we all had to take the same religion courses, there were like 20 different sections to accommodate the 400 plus freshmen. And the religion department all used the same exam, no matter the teacher, but one teacher was head of the department and made the exam. So students during this teacher's exam reviews had basically the exam on their hands, cause the reviews and study guides we had heard from a perclassman were word for word. So back to the Facebook page, my classmates would post literally pages and pages of the study guides and reviews on the FB page, and then we would discuss the reviews of such. But then apparently someone somehow got a hold of the actual exam and started posting only a few pages of it. The administration found out quickly after that there was a snitch in my grade and had the Facebook page taken down and suspended the kid that posted the exam and gave detentions to all the freshmen. So for the next week all you saw after school in the detention room was freshmen filling it to the brim, smelling of body odor and puberty-ridden hormones. Thank God it happened in the winter to cause, if it was hot like in the summer around here I think it would have been a gas chamber. My high school wasn't the worst place in the world, but there were a few fights in the cafeteria. you learn quite a bit when fights happen somewhat consistently. Everyone fights differently. Point like, most guy fights are mostly posturing and being held back with some light scuffling. Then it's over with girl fights. You have maybe 15 seconds of shouting before the earrings come out and they fully attempt to murder each other. I've seen girls leap clear across round tables made for like 8 people to get at someone. The fight that sticks out most clearly in my mind, then, is the one that breaks the mold I'm used to. A guy fight that escalated incredibly quickly. Not sure how many people heard about this, so it might not be legendary, but I will never forget this. I'm sitting right by the lunch line, going about my business, when suddenly me and my friend sitting with me hear something coming from the line. Which is weird, since usually it's white noise from all the kids, but they have all stopped talking, and it's just one kid speaking. He's literally poking the guy in front of him in line repeatedly, peppering him with insults about his girlfriend. They are getting worse, from how ugly she is to how much of a hoe she is, and such. Point kid on the receiving end is stone-faced, not looking, not reacting, but the abuse is getting worse. The perpetrator is getting louder, and people have started watching. Point now. Lunch lines at my old school had those little stanchions with the seatbelt band things between them running along one side. Both boys are on the inside, between that and the lunch counter. At this point everyone nearby is watching this. I couldn't tell what was said that changed this kid, but the other kid is shoving him around shouting obscenities when the victim turns around slowly, his face a mask, and stares the other guy down. Point at which point he delivers the cleanest punch I have ever seen in my life. One hit and the other kid is launched back, so much so that he clears the line guard, flies over it without even knocking it down, lands square in his ass, and just sits there for a moment, dazed, while the other kid keeps staring him down. Then they both snap out of it and fly at each other. One of the new teachers comes out of nowhere and slides in between them, keeping them apart, while friends try to pull them off, and everyone is going nuts. So yeah, we had a kid choked out in middle school till he passed out in a hallway. Girl flew over a table at another one. 2 girls fought every day for a whole week. Same time, same place, one of them pregnant. But I have never seen anything like that one hit. We had this legendary story about a student trashing the school in the most epic way. My high school was a bit of a walk up a hill, so one morning I'm walking up with some friends and we see some people coming back down the hill and they're like, "School is cancelled, the school's been flooded." Point what? So of course we got to see this. Keep walking up to school, and there are papers on the ground that look kinda like porno pics. They are. The even better part of it was that the heads were exchanged with the heads of teachers, principals and secretaries. The secretary getting dick from the gym teacher, 3-way with the principal, vice principal and the law teacher. The pics he chose were great shots from the yearbook, all smiles, looking like they were having the time of their lives. It was hilarious. Point and the school was flooded. When I got there was a waterfall down the stairs. The school gym, with hardwood floors, was in the basement, so apparently we had a pool. I didn't get to see that, but the water had been on all night and there was a lot of damage. Point legend has it the kid who did it broke into the school at night, late 80s early 90s, so no cameras, turned on a bunch of the fire hoses, left these bornos all over the school grounds, and then bounced that morning to go live in Europe. What a way to go out. We had to change schools for a semester while they repaired the hardwood floors in the gym and clear out the mold from the moisture. The principal said charges were going to be laid, cause he knew the rascal who did this. But I never heard any follow up about him getting charged. Point TLDR student makes a mag with teachers' heads on Born magazine scenes. Flood school, bounces to Europe, drops mic. It was a last year of high school and decided to make something we would remember. So we elaborated a plan to have a sleepover in a classroom with 2 friends. We noticed that the room on the 2nd floor, 3rd floor for US, where we had our philosophy class had one window that wouldn't close. Point we met one night around 11 PM at the back of the building, in a field, where we parked our motorcycles. Then proceeded to get into the main yard at the center of the building. It was a open building, U-shaped, so this was the easy part. The hardest part was to get to the room on the 2nd floor. Fortunately, it was reachable by getting on the roof of the 1st floor. After a bit of climbing, we managed to get in the classroom, and then we spent the night there watching Snowboard's DVDs we took with us, eating chocolate and cookies, and drinking orange juice. We even had a guitar with us. The hardest thing was that we had to pee on the roof because there was movement sensors in the building. Fast forward to the next morning. There had been a swap between our philosophy class and the Spanish class right next to ours. The teacher opened the door and found us still in our sleeping bags. We were waiting our cool and funny teacher. We were lucky enough because the Spanish teacher was chill enough to find it cool and not reporting us to the principal. Point from this day, we've been known as the dudes who slept one night in the high school. Point fun fact, I recently overheard at a party a bunch of little brothers and sisters of friends talking about that. Without knowing it was us. Felt like a secret hero. Well, it isn't really legendary compared to other stories here, but whatever. I went to a high school that was really small, so they didn't have certain things a normal high school would have, like consistent sports teams, a gym class, or a cafeteria. So during lunch, all classes would be let out into the hall to wait in line for the people from the food truck to give them lunch. No lunch options either, just whatever one thing they brought that day. There was an outdoor area with a few benches, but it always got too crowded, so a lot of people would sit in the hall to eat. Point anyway, it was pizza day, and I was sitting in the hall when the principal came up to a group of about 10 people. He took one girl aside and told her she can't wear what she was wearing again, and that she needed to put her sweater on. A small argument happened, and he turned around to go to his office. This girl's boyfriend started with, "That you gonna let him talk to you like that? Crap." She got pissed off, grabbed a full slice of pizza from the top of the trash can, and hurled it at the principal's back. There was grease and sauce, chunks of pepperoni and cheese all over his white shirt. He stopped in his tracks. The dough slid down his back on the floor. When he turned around, it looked like he had strangled someone to death and was reliving the rage-filled memories. Who threw that? The group went quiet. One pointed at me and the guy sitting across from me. It was so obvious neither of us did it. We were both just sitting cross-legged on the floor still holding food, and were two people that never caused problems like that, so we didn't even dignify it with a defense. The principal barely got a threat out before her boyfriend ratted her out like a bitch, and all her friends followed his lead. Point she had full-on janitor duties after school for a week. I don't know what happened to her after that. I went to a fairly respectable public school that was also an international school. The Asians and Eastern Europeans never caused much fuss, but the Russians were a problem. They rolled as a gang, even though they ranged in age between 15 and 18, but there was about 20 of them, so they could be a problem. Inaho, my best friend at the time, objected to one of them barging into the canteen line, and they didn't take that so well. There was a small scuffle which didn't actually involve any real fighting, but about 6 of them got suspended for being the aggressors. The next day, the suspended kids were lingering on the edge of the school with another 6 of them, because apparently they have nothing better to do than loiter. They start picking on some year 8s, 13 or 14 years old, like real jackasses. One of them was slapping this kid in the face, who hadn't done anything to warrant it. Well, it just so happened that this got the attention of the school rugby team, who were mostly my friends and I. My other best mate took exceptional offense to the slapping and started belting the Russian kid in the face. From there it was on like Donkey Kong. The rugby team was not made up of small blokes. They knocked the absolute stuffing out of those Russian assholes. Even broke a few ribs and that sort of thing. Everyone involved with that fight was suspended. I hadn't actually been there for the fight. We took it as a victory, but it was only the start. Point the next day, about a dozen Russian faking men show up. These were nasty looking dudes in their mid-20s with baseball bats, hockey sticks and whatnot. They're looking for the guys involved in the fight and want payback. Everyone on campus is mute. We have no idea what the fuck to do. After about 2 minutes of this, teachers came pouring out of the staff room and got between the thugs and the students. Must have been about 20 teachers. They put themselves out there for us. The thugs cleared off, and we had police cars patrol for weeks afterwards. I left school with my best mate every day, so he wouldn't get jumped alone, but that was pretty much the end of it. My school has a gossip page on Instagram people use to find out if people they like have girl/boyfriend, and also has more than 20 such tapes got published/leaked to the school WhatsApp/Facebook or news. The 4 years I went to the HS and 3 SOMs were not uncommon. Point: the school is at a rich location of the biggest city in Europe and walking distance to the bar/club/nightlife location of the city. So many weird stuff happens, and so many will happen. Also, our school is a 18th century French palace building, so it has a dungeon which some tapes were taken at, because the dungeon doors have some iron bars missing, and it's a one in a lifetime experience to do stuff there. But the place is cold. Point: so many shit happened there. I was involved in most of them, because I lived far from the school, so I spent time with friends every day, before taking more than an hour of way home. I hope my uni will be just as weird. Point: we also had a secret some teachers knew, but we kept it clean and actually well maintained garden with bunch of tiny and huge potted plants at the roof of the school that you only access from a very old spiral staircase where people used to hang out when they smoked or didn't want to be seen, and its own little community. Point: we also would party every time tests ended and have huge water fights out of nowhere all the time. Our school was not supported by government, so it has its own governing system, because our school refused to close and turn the historic building to a museum. We had our own little community there with different rules than most schools, and it worked better actually for you when used to it. We never had fights or bad stuff. Average score was better than most of the nearby normal schools, and our graduates went to better places. The glory days. Me and my friends were the music guys. We'd always hang out in the music rooms and jam. One day, the music room is locked, so we return to our haunt in the corridor in front of our classroom. There's this cupboard that holds keyboards, and we'd usually cram like 6 of us in there, and hook them all up to spam the DJ button, and piss off everyone in the lounge beside the cupboard. One day, we found out we could actually sneak into one of the music rooms through a shelf-like tunnel. Cue the Great Escape, or break-in as it was later called, as we tunnel through a small passage and enter one of the music rooms. We hook up amps, play the drum kit, and then when we are bored of rocking out and annoying half the school, we find Christmas decorations just before the summer holidays and decorate the entire room. The teacher came as we were just finishing, and she saw us all. We still jumped out the windows and ran to the field to smoke a joint. We were all internally excluded for a week for breaking into a classroom and vandalizing it together. In a computer room, my friend brought World of Warcraft into school and we played it for a week solid on and off. About 5 of us too. Smoking out the back of the gym on lunch break. A massive crowd of us, different cliques all banding together to get their 15-year-old nicotine fix. My monkey brain had been wired to always paranoid since I first hit the devil's lettuce, and I was on edge of being caught and used to sit right beside a large wheeled buffer bin, massive trash can, just as I hear my friend say, dryly, "Hello Miss Z." In humor of us all being caught, I managed to dive under the bin, still toking, whilst my friends are all collared for a 5-minute report. You need it signed every 5 minutes during breaks to prove you aren't smoking. 3. We used to fack about a lot on the PCs, and would often mirror the teacher's monitor to ours, and get staff passwords, and send stupid emails around. My clit is huge was my friend's doing, from our deputy head at the time. Emailed to all of our year. The one that caused the most uproar, however, was when our teacher left the classroom and had opened an application that had every student's name, address and personal notes. The personal notes were horrific. They mentioned wealth, parents, means, and were pretty insulting to a lot of people, especially one of our friends. We copied everything, saved it and sent a direct link to the entire school, my year and the year below us all. Y11 and 10 took to the school playing grounds in protest and had a half day off. We didn't get in trouble. The Nazi bitch of a deputy head we had left the school after the term, and the impression was that this gang of spotty musical podhead nerds did it. We didn't get cheat a lot of the time from the jocks/chavs due to our antics, but it never happened again. Come our last year we were dating the popular girls and going to the cool parties and cheat. School for this nerd was some of the best years I've had. Save college. I'm going to go and cry nostalgic tears. Edit. Formatting is a bit cheat, sorry. I'm from a random shit show country, so a lot of insane things happen in our schools. Seen two gypsies suck each other's dicks in a 69 position. Some kid jerking off behind girl and ejaculating on her coat. Winter time. Some kid from my class brought a teaser in school and was teasing kids left and right until he slipped with the teaser in his back pocket. Apparently when he fell on his, but the teaser activated in Karma Beach. I was in class then when he was running around the halls teasing kids, but the loud scream he made when he slipped and teased himself was so pleasant. What a wonderful day. Some ugly AF girl getting pregnant from a 3. Some in the classroom later on being beaten the fuck out in the toilet by bunch of angry, envious girls. I'm sure if I put my mind into it I'll remember enough to write an essay about what she chow my school was. Some things that got big in my school that had me in it were when someone lied that a ma beat another kid. It spread somehow throughout the whole school and I got suspended. Yep, just like that. For nothing. Last year of school I got drunk AF and went to school. Fell asleep later on, puked in class on my gradebook/note or whatever it's called. It had only maximum grades in it. RIP. Apparently the moments I don't remember being asleep, I was often waking up to show the middle finger to random people in class. That part I wish I remember. We had this legendary prank during the college freshman initial rites. Here it's custom that when you start college or the university as we say here, you will have to do at least one freshman initial rite. I for example had to go to the site's most populated downtown area and sign Backstreet Boys I Want It for 4 hours, but some other guys got the job of buying a bench. This was supposed to just be the classic manual labor shetty task that like 20 people get each year. So these two guys had to go down to downtown and buy a typical park bench and carry it to the university, which is located at the top of the mountain in the city. So this was tedious and would take a few hours because they also had to dress up in some weird cosplay suits and take breaks every now and then around populate areas. You know the drill. Anyway, this become legendary because the cops stopped them after like 10 minutes. The bench they had bought really was the super typical park bench and someone believed they had stolen in one of the big parks in the downtown. However, they had the receipt of course as they had actually bought it legally. So the cop let them go. Then they got stopped again by another pair of cops 20 minutes later. Then again 10 minutes later. After this the admins at the different police station knew that it was just some university prank, so while they called in, while talking to these guys for the 3rd time they told all the cops to just ignore any calls from the public about 2 young males. They were 18 to 19, carrying/playing around on park benches in the middle of the city. And bam, they overheard this. As soon as the cops left they called this news into their senior frat leader guys who rallied up the whole rest of the university, all fraternities, about 40 with e.g around 10 to 20 members each plus all their freshmen, and everyone went around in the city stealing all the benches from everywhere, not just the parks but also the avenue walk benches and so on. This ended with it being something around 400 benches placed around like crazy on the campus until the cops stopped it. I was directly involved, didn't think about it for years and later assumed it was my imagination, or I dreamt it. Last week it was confirmed by someone standing the other side of the door. Oh man, it really happened. Morning break time, UK, West Midlands, late 90s. I and several friends were waiting in the stairwell of the school library when the bell went, so for a laugh we put our shoulders to the door to trap everyone in it. It was going quite well until what felt like the cavalry arrived, and we had to put every last bit of strength into confining our prisoners. Then something hit the floor inside, and audible gasps were heard, and as one we pissed off right out of there. Sharpish point at the end of the next lesson it began circulating that one of the math teachers, a ginger fellow, was on the receiving end of the large brass steampunk-ish looking pneumatic door closer device, which chose that moment to fall off and brain him, knocking him clean the fuck out. We quickly met up at dinner time, and realizing the gravity of our situation, swore to not only never mention it to anyone, but to not even mention it again to each other, and indeed we did exactly that, hence why the memory of the incident was semi-repressed. Perhaps if we didn't, it would have got wider legendary status, but indeed last week, I was informed by my old tech teacher it had legendary status amongst the staff. And they found it immensely funny that little ginger tea got what he deserved. So our principal announced over the PA in morning announcements to dress appropriately and not skanky. Some people were upset, the SJWs of Tumblr for a lack of a better term, with his choice of words. So tensions were building up. So a student decided to tape some posters around the school saying dress for school, not the street corner, and featured a drawing of a girl wearing short shorts / booty shorts / whatever they're called. This drawing was focused more on showing the ass crack, so it was certainly not appropriate. So when one of the girls saw the poster, they were more upset. However, she assumed that a staff member posted it and not a student. Things blew up and we had news channels visit our school. My friend was interviewed for a good 5 minutes and the news company only used a 3-second line from him in the video. Lol. There was a organized protest where students were encouraged to dress skanky and it was arranged to occur on the same day as the news interview day. In my opinion, the protest wasn't very impactful since only a handful of students dressed for it and stood at location. Some did dress skanky, but they were against the protest. After most of the drama, one of the girls posted on Facebook. Maybe it wasn't a teacher who posted the image. Wasn't that obvious? So that was an exciting period of events. Keep in mind that they did all of this because our principal used a bad choice of words, which he apologized for the day after it happened, and some prankster posting the as posters, which offended a girl enough to assume they were being attacked by the staff members. A focus group was created in the aftermath, and a fake nothing changed. So this was all for nothing. Same year, there was graffiti on one of the walls, which depicted 9/11 and a Nike slogan, just do it. So this girl finds it, she was not involved with the triggering, snaps a pic, and sends it to her mother. Instead of calling the school and inquiring about the graffiti, or ignoring it like most people, the mother sends it to a faking news outlet. So then rumors of a bomb threat surfaced, and our principal found out the next morning when he came to school. No, there wasn't any bomb. A lot of students ditched class that day in fear of the bomb threat. These students knew that the bomb threat wasn't legit. They just wanted out of class all because of a stupid mother. Don't get me wrong, I fully understand why she would be concerned. But why the fuck would you contact the public media instead of the school or the police? Also that same year, some grade 9 guy got a hand job from a grade 9 girl in the study hall. Both suspended for a week. Great year. Let me tell you a tale. An Australian high school. In the late 60s it developed a very bad reputation as a place where girls got pregnant. The depth of education sent a very tough headmaster, so by the time I got there, in the 70s, it was locked down tight. Really tight. So, when I was about 15, some older kids produced a school magazine, without the sanction of the staff. All the articles were very critical of the teachers, usually through parody and satire, and the cartoons even more so. One sticks in my memory. Female teacher, why can't the girls wear pantsuits in winter? To be warmer, as a male teacher gazes salaciously at a pretty blonde student in the standard short skirt. So that came out, and the perpetrators were immediately stamped on by the teachers. Suspensions and other punishments were meted out. This reached the general population, and after an assembly we refused to go to class and milled around making unhappy noises. The vice principal got on the PA and barked go to class immediately. And the noise rose to a roar and general milling about. It's the closest I've been to a revolution. And I do believe it was that close. We eventually went to class, but for 15 minutes the teachers were sheet scared. Some of the suspended students were reinstated, some not, and the whole thing was swept under the carpet. But it was remembered as an epic day. At my first high school somebody threw the principal through a window of his office. The year after I left, somebody had pulled a knife in class and the whole school went into lockdown. Not so bad as or anything, but in PE class, the year below me were doing athletics, and that week one of the classes were doing javelin. The system they used was everyone pair up, stand in a line and all throw it on a countdown. Then once everyone has thrown, go and collect it. Apparently someone forgot to throw and nobody had realized, so he threw it when others were collecting and it actually got another guy in the leg. Apparently it went through, he had to be airlifted to hospital, but not before they cut the javelin down to a more reasonable size point. At the second high school there was one lunchtime that we were all outside and some guy came in with two of his friends. I have no clue who he was, but apparently quite a few other people do. Was never clear on who he was though. Apparently he was looking for someone to beat up. I need to mention that this guy was a pretty small scrawny white kid and his friends weren't too big either. But the main guy was ridiculous. He was wearing a cheap suit, but a baggy one, a more formal hat, can't remember what style, sorta like a smaller top hat, and actually had a pimp cane, and walked with a limp, almost as if he came from the haters ball. When I was in year 11th we used to have tennis cages that had a gate on, so they could lock it at night to stop local kids ruining it for the school. The school had a lot of fights as our school was what they call a filter school, the place where people go when they have no other choice. Surprisingly good education, just a lot of rough local kids. Most these fights were the usual playground fights, where someone yells fight and all the kids gang around, while two kids beat hell out of each other, usually being split up by the teachers within minutes. At the start of the year, someone had the great idea to arrange the fights and lock the two people fighting inside the tennis cages. They would throw the key into the crowd to a group of people, so the teachers never knew who had the key. It would take until the caretaker came to cut the lock off before the fight was stopped. At this point it had been a full-on fight with one person already. Some of the fights were pretty crap, but some were rather bad, with one resulting in a kid having to skip his GCSEs because he was in hospital. Majority of the time these kids at one were either kicked out the school or put into segregation for the rest of their school time. For the duration this took place, I would go to canteen, get a can of Coke and sausage roll, then get a place at the cage to have front row fight seats. It's a shame no one ever rigged up betting. It took 4 of these bad fights before they removed the gates completely and just leave the cages to get trashed at night by locals using them. Late to the party, still want to share. We have a few. In our first year of high school, my friends and I found a way to access the school's PA system. We played some Bourne videos and broadcast the sounds to the entire school. You could say students were more awake than usual that morning. We were never found out, so to this day no one has any idea how that happened. One of the discipline teachers got fired. It was the night of our school's anniversary, and we had a party of sorts for students, faculty, alumni, and their families. You needed a ticket to get in. Some guy who wasn't even from the school wanted to get in for some reason, but didn't have a ticket, so he climbed over the gates. The discipline teacher tried to kick him out. Dude spat in his face. Teacher lost it and punched the kid. It was only a few months after I began my first year, so I didn't know the teacher, but I still can't help feeling sorry for him. Got a new principal. Some guy created a Facebook account pretending to be him. Police got involved, and the kid got expelled. Haven't heard about him since. A girl and a guy getting it on the roof of the school. Either they were exhibitionists or just completely oblivious to the crowd that had formed below watching the guys naked as. Apparently the guard found them still doing it and had to put a premature end to their sexy time. I can't imagine how awkward it must have been for all 3 of them as they walked silently to the principal's office. Became national news, a racial riot between students. Classic. This dude was looking at me and I didn't like it. Confrontation that had escalated quickly. It was a new principal by then who had absolutely no idea what to do. A lot of the better teachers had already left beforehand. The police and media got involved. Several kids got arrested and were suspended or expelled. The school was constantly under surveillance by the police in the weeks that followed. I guess the school was too embarrassed to admit to racism, so it told the authorities that they were fighting over a girl, which was what the media reported to the public. Last 2 happened after I'd graduated. Upon typing this post I thought about how much I missed high school, but as I continued typing, I can now safely say that I'm glad to be out of that trash heap. I'm not sure how legendary this is, but it was certainly hilarious. My senior year, me and a few friends were all in the broadcast second period class, which was the class that conducted the morning announcements. It was basically run like a news program. We had a producer, 2 anchors, a cameraman, a teleprompter person, and very limited adult supervision. We would always mess around and try to hide stuff in the slides or on the screen, like poorly photoshopped panda bears and stuff like that. For example, we always had a moment of silence after the pledge and before the announcements. It started out with us putting serene photos on the screen, like landscapes and stuff like that, and then evolved to cute animals, and then just ridiculous photoshops. I remember one time we photoshopped a grizzly bear on top of a Corvette, for some reason. It was great. People watched closely, just to see what ridiculous images we would put on the screen. Well, every now and then the TV system would mess up, and we would have to do the announcements over the PA system. Towards the end of the school year, we got the idea to hijack the PA system. The next time we had to do the announcements over the PA system, we watched our teacher closely and memorized the access code she put into the telephone. In order to gain access to the PowerPoint, we now had the code, just needed someone dumb enough to talk into it. Well, I went out into the hallway to use the restroom and saw possibly the biggest jackass in our grade and asked him if he'd be interested. He said hell yeah point, so we brought him in, called the PA system, and told him to say whatever he wanted. He went with the classic balls, long and drawn out. It was awesome. We all thought it was hilarious, and he must have gotten a rush from it, because we decided to do it again the next day, except this time he goes on a short little cursing tirade sheet fuck balls bitch motherfuck as. It was great point. Well, the principal's office traced the call back to our classroom, and it was just a matter of time before they figured out who did it. So I had to spend the last week of my high school career in in-school suspension, and they almost revoked my ability to walk across the stage for graduation. Totally worth it though. I was part of the legend that was Magic Mike my sophomore year. Mike was a 6 feet 4 inches 350 pounds motherfucker with a glorious beard and curly afro I met my freshman year of college. He had earned his name at the beginning of the school year through his hype man, that's what Magic called him. T-Man point. He could drink like a goddamn tank and smoke weed like a chimney. We'd burn down every day in his truck in a parking lot sorta off campus. Anyways, I lived near the SC border, where salvia was legal, and you could buy an ounce of the dried leaves for like $15 at a local head shop. Being the nefarious little sheets we are, at the end of freshman year we decided next year we would sell salvia, because there was a market for psychedelics and it'd be easy to flip an ounce of salvia and make an insane profit being able to pick up a zip for only $15. Well, sophomore year begins to loom over the end of summer and salvia was no longer legal to sell in shops in SC. Sheet out of luck. Right? Wrong point. Naturally, we decided hey, let's just sell weed instead, so we pick up an ounce in Charlotte and bring it up to Raleigh. We then grabbed our 4-hose Yik Yak and posted out on the freshman quad during welcome week trying to attract the stoners in the crowd. Point. After 2 hours we had given our number. We didn't let them know it was our number. We just said text this guy and he'll hook you up, to 75 different people, and by the end of the night 6 hours later we had 200 numbers in our phones. We quickly moved from selling an O a week to about 2 O's a week. We were selling to the football team, women's gymnastic and soccer teams, and the men's tennis team. Point. We then had the brilliant idea to offer a special of 90 quarters and 45/8ths for a limited time sale. Really, the sale never ended. We just did it to flip faster and we soon moved up to flipping a £1/4 every 2 days. In 2 months we had cornered the campus market for bud and became the biggest dealers on campus. Unfortunately this all came to an abrupt end for reasons I won't get into, but what we are left with is a legend of Magic Mike, one of the greatest and shortest lived drug dealers of all time at NCSU. Point. Don't know who is now. Magic and I have since moved on from that life and are finishing our degrees, but it always makes me smile when I overhear some former customers, now juniors, reminiscing about us as I walk through campus. So my high school earned the moniker of Fungi High. During my freshman year, we had a really bad mold problem, and it was a big school, about 2,000 students, so there was a serious health risk. I knew one guy who literally couldn't step foot inside of the school because he had a weakened immune system and would have an almost immediate reaction. For a few months, students actively protested in various ways, culminating in a series of walkouts during 1 week. Basically, a large group of students would just walk out the front doors and protest with signs and such. One day, my friends got involved, not me. I didn't want to risk getting in trouble, and it was the day that news cameras were on the scene. One of the things that got aired was my friend on someone's shoulders throwing up 2 middle fingers screaming "Fuck the fungus." They weren't live, so it got censored, but it was still pretty funny. The walkouts got quelled when people started ordering pizzas. Another notable story from that school was from the same year. We had a fire drill, and everyone started filing out of classrooms, down the stairs, out the door. But it got pretty clogged, and there was a traffic jam on the stairs. Like I said, large school. Someone at the bottom started yelling at us to just go back up. So I did, and I was one of the first to do so. I was also one of the first to notice that there was a trash can on fire in one of the hallways. Like, completely ablaze, smoke filling the hallway. I kind of just stared in disbelief for a second when a teacher ran past and shouted at me to get the hell out, which I did. No one was hurt, thankfully, and the fire didn't spread. I've taken fire alarms more seriously since then, though. I don't think this counts as legendary, but maybe the scale was. I found out the whole background on this from a friend who went on to become a teacher at our old high school later on. So I was in 8th grade when Columbine occurred, so by the time I got to high school cameras existed, but really only around the doors and parking lots. My school had out lunch, so it meant anyone that wasn't a freshman could leave campus for lunch. We also had 3 lunch periods starting at like 9 or 10 on. Anyways, towards the end of my freshman year, school administrators were getting angry because people were pissing in milk cartons and then throwing them against the walls in the boys and girls bathroom near the lunchroom. So of course they assumed, since this was occurring using milk cartons, it had to be freshmen. I forgot to add this wasn't like 1 carton at a time, this was like 10 cartons every time. So the administration did every dumb cheat thing a school to try and stop this all. They closed the bathroom / it just happened in different bathrooms. They tried to keep us from having milk / that didn't work. They even put a teacher at the door to check after everyone left the bathroom. It just kept happening. So finally they got smart and put a camera outside the door. What they noticed is that people coming in from out lunch stopped off in the bathrooms before going back to class. As it turned, all the upperclassmen were buying milk cartons off campus, pissing in them, and then smashing against the walls in this bathroom. What was craziest was that this happened for like 3 months leading up to graduation. They kept like 25 kids from walking at graduation. TLDR, weirdo upperclassmen were buying milk cartons off campus during lunch, pissing in them, and then smashing against a wall in a bathroom. First off, I don't post ever on Reddit, so sorry if this is really vague and has sheet spelling / grammar. The last week of high school in your final year in Australia is usually muck up, fuck up, week / day point. Most years before us just waterbombed the year 7, 10s and went out for beers after our fuck up week. We decided to take it to a whole new level and try and make sure we would be the last year allowed a fuck up week. The week went as such. Monday, capture eels from a dam the night before and place them in all the sinks and some toilets within the school. Then get drunk, mess around, i.e. bolt tables to the roof and leave. Play some bondage born on the smart boards and leave the room. Start a makeshift fight club in our assembly hall. Tuesday, piss bomb and egg any and all target coming out of the school assembly hall dressed in our rival school's uniforms. That night, go to the local all-girls school and spray paint everything, supergluing locks and doors so they can't open, and filling their sexist principal's room with 7 large bush turkeys. Wednesday, at night, burned a pentagram into the local Catholic school's blessed grass outside its chapel. Go to the local Anglican school and superglue their lunch tables in another pentagon-looking shape in the middle of their quad. Make a water slide in the middle of our school. Set a few bins on fire and leave for the pub. Thursday, defend our school from revenge attacks. As other schools came around to start a fight for the damage we caused to their school, we decided to give them that fight. This was only done so another smaller group could run back to their cars and spray paint all their windows black. Smashed her in a few windows, threw manure in their cars, and caused those fakers thousands of dollars in replacements and cleaning. Went back to our all-girls sister school and met up with their year for a beach party. Went to the beach nearby and proceeded to have a drunken party on this semi-secluded beach. Everyone was openly taking drugs, weed, snorting MDMA and inhaling nags, and drinking. Few people had a few quickies before the police got called, and we all had to split point with the girls until we had a house party, stayed there till it became a merry-go-round of taxis and ambulances taking people away. Friday, go to our graduation ceremony. If you were not yet suspended or expelled, streaked through the Catholic girls' school, go to the pub and smash a few beers. Finally a small group went back to our school at night and spray painted, "Farewell, cunts." Sincerely the class of 2012, in. All the school walkways we could before the police and security chased us off. Point overall, the scorecard from the week is as follows. 4 were expelled, 4 suspended, 20 received criminal records and were charged with vandalism or other shit I can't remember. More than likely drug possession and a cruelty to animals. Change for the eels, thousands of dollars in damages, caused by us, the majority of us looking for different schools to sit our HSC exams as we were not allowed back. Point multiple people had their stomach pumped at hospital and one ruined high school reputation to the wider public. I'm 22 now, and I still have 13 to 20-year-olds come up to me at my work, or when I wear my old senior's jacket out to the shop, and basically they all say that my year has become the stuff of myth and legends. It warms my heart knowing that we are still remembered nearly half a decade on as lunatic legends. TLDR, my senior year went on an muck-up week rampage. It involved spray paint, turkeys, eels, drugs and other insane shit. Edit, found weird. In the middle of nowhere. My school has this huge rivalry with a nearby school, especially in basketball. They have this one star player, we'll call him T, and he basically carries their team. This happened last year, and an away game against our rival school. The year before, T repeatedly cheated on his girlfriend, who went to his school, with a girl that went to our school, and she graduated. We will call her E, and she went to University of X. Everybody at my school knew about it, but by some miracle, T's girlfriend had not figured it out. So we are at this away game and this cheeky faker who goes to my school brings a big ass sign to the game, and halfway through, pulls it out. It says, "Hey T, how is he?" And T's girlfriend sees it, somehow knows exactly what it means, and leaves the game bawling her eyes out. We won that game. The next time we played them, somebody else brought a big University X sign, just to taunt T even more. It was hilarious. Anyway, our admins caught wind of it, and now we aren't allowed to make signs, unless they get approved by them. The guys who made those signs specifically aren't allowed to make any more, so now they just bring blank white signs to every game. TLDR, basketball star from rival school cheated with a girl from our school. We called him out on it with a sign at a game. He got psyched out and we won. Now we can't make funny signs. First year of law school. If you've ever been, you know your first year is hell, because professors can cold call your ass, and with 100s of pages of reading each night, there's a damn good chance you may not have read the case. In a contracts professor felt like being merciful that day, and asked for volunteers for a particular case where one of the parties' names was Hoover. Kid raises his hand. Prof. Okay, Mr. Student. Go ahead kid. So this is a case about the Hoover Dam. At this point, the prof and the rest of the class are staring quizzically at each other. Students are questioning if they all read the wrong case. Prof is questioning what the hell this kid is talking about because this case had nothing to do with the goddamn dam. We're all wondering why the hell he volunteered in the first place. Prof stops kid and tells him he read the wrong case. But that moments like this are how some law school students become legends. Within seconds, everyone is on Facebook, posting memes about this case is about the Hoover Dam, or this case is about Hoover vacuums, or this case is about Herbert Hoover and such. To this day, he is known as the Hoover Dam Kid. A legend was born that day, and a lesson was learned that winging it in law school is neither wise nor recommended. Story time. I was a rebellious teenager and looking to get back at the it guys managing the network for our high school. Stupid websites. It started with me finding out that I could use a browser-based remote desktop to connect to my computer from home. I could now view any website from school using my computer at home, but it didn't end there. After finding out a way to disable/enable deep freeze at will, used to mirror hard drives, so you don't have a year's worth of student usage left. I made a little backdoor for myself. Little me was gearing towards some sort of cyber shenanigans. All I needed was one computer left online. Until then, I was content with randomly restarting/shutting down computers around the school and occasionally broadcasting messages across the network that couldn't be traced back to me. The night happened, and finally someone left one of the tagged computers online. I start foaming at the mouth, but could not manage to guess or brute force my way through the passwords I needed to cause much of a ruckus. After 2 hours of little mischief achieved, I went big for a finisher. You see, this was almost 10 years ago. Back when Goats was still popular, I disabled deep freeze, Goats the desktop, and re-enabled deep freeze. This way no matter what, unless you had control over deep freeze, the first thing you saw when you booted up was, you guessed it, point and little me discovered that the authorities take that sort of thing seriously in high school, and due to my cooperation, sniff type, they decided to not add my name to a certain list. TLDR, junior year student finds a simply trick to get freedom from school's firewall. Takes a prank way too far and is forever known for horrifying a classroom of students and not being a such offender. My elementary school got vandalized by former pupils, 10 to 14 some night. They basically destroyed all the drawings and lessons from kids and splattered paint everywhere. They were of course discovered by police and had a serious bad time, I guess. They didn't went to jail though, but they were my neighbors and they eventually got fired from their house for other reasons. Not in my middle school, but in one nearby. The principal had to see the parents of a kid to explain them. He wanted to fire him. The father literally beat the crap out of him with a book the principal had nearby. The principal had to be hospitalized, and the kid was moved in a foster family, if I remember well. In my high school, the cleaning ladies were bored of students throwing trash to the ground. One morning, they made a path through the entrance entirely from trash they had collected, forced every student to walk into it, and took pictures and videos. For the record, I guess. No garbage on the floor to be seen since then. In my postgraduate school, we once had a little party in the neighborhood. 100-200 people in a really quiet and small town. Around midnight, the cops arrived because we were making too much noise. They had dogs, lacrimosa, many people were drunk and or high. One of us, who had no responsibilities in this, walked towards them saying something like, "Don't worry, I'm going to explain them." He had to be held back. He was really drunk, but he became a small legend. I'm quite disappointed to see my legends related to others, but this is how we do in Dahood. Not really an English speaker, and it is 2 AM. Please don't punch me if you find some bad mistakes. Okay, so I'm kinda late to this thread, but whatever, some background information. My middle school was right next to the high school. You could walk there in less than 5 minutes if you really booked it. Now, onto the story point. I was just sitting in English class in 7th grade, last period of the day, when the principal came over the intercom saying that the school was on lockdown and nobody was to enter or leave. There weren't any intruders, but we would all be held a little longer than usual and the buses would all be delayed. Nobody knew what was going on, so we all just sat around and came up with stupid ideas until this one girl with an older sibling at the high school freaked out and said that there was a bomb threat. Seconds after she says this, a kid starts losing his shit and pointing out the window yelling something about attack helicopters. Sure enough, we look out the windows towards the high school and see not one, not two, but 3 helicopters circling the high school, along with an ungodly amount of cop cars swarming the street. A few hours later, well after we were all able to go home, we find out that they actually found 2 or 3 bombs hidden in various places around the high school, and there was talk of cancelling school for everyone the next day. Turns out that the fuckwit who actually threatened to blow up bits of the school called someone really high up on the chain of command. I think he called the county police chief or some shit. I don't know, which is why there were helicopters and shit. For completely unrelated reasons, I moved to a different state my sophomore year of HS, and that high school is kind of legendary in its own right, at least in the county. For perspective, we are the wealthiest county in the state, and one of the top 10 wealthiest in the nation. My sophomore year, there was a bomb threat, and over the next 2 weeks, every single high school in the county had to deal with at least one bomb threat. Every single one. A year later, our principal was asked to resign for receiving his fifth DUI, and my calculus teacher was fired for sexually harassing a student. Looking forward to seeing what's gonna happen my senior year. I don't recall what the occasion was, but there was a presentation of some sort in high school, US, that required us to be seated in the outdoor football stadium. The home side is large, 30 to 40 rows end zone to end zone, brick facade, etc. The away side was nothing but a few rows of bleachers. Football field was surrounded by a running track and a wrought iron fence surrounded 3 sides with padding to protect, and also obscure vision. There was a small shack for concessions on the away side. Towards the end of this ceremony, fireworks begin to go off in the football field grass, maybe around the 20-yard line closest to the east side of the field on our right. Not near anyone presenting. Confused everyone. This was way before Columbine. No one was concerned about it being gunfire. We couldn't have imagined what the fuck. Just then, people started gasping, laughing, pointing to the track on the other side of the field. A naked man was running on the track, towards the west end zone. He hopped the iron fence, and then just vanished. As it turns out, the fireworks were the diversion, so that we wouldn't see the naked dude getting out of the concession shack. The firecrackers arrived on the football field by bow and arrow, shot by a friend of naked dude. By the time anyone saw naked dude, he was at top speed. Too many people knew what was going to happen, or the guys bragged, and they got caught. They were seniors. I don't recall what kind of trouble they got in. This happened in year 9 during secondary school. In Melbourne, our school was one of the first to introduce a maximum center which started during year 7 that was big enough to hold up to 4 out of the 7 classes at a time. Just one giant big room, but there were areas where different classes ran. After we were done briefing what we had to do for the lesson, we could walk around and mingle. It was very social, probably the biggest contributor to removing cliques, as our year level was all pretty tight. There were no jocks, nerds or anything. We were all pretty good mates. Anyway, I was in 9A, which was the advanced learning class. We basically did about twice as much work as everybody else. We had this math teacher who really wouldn't help anyone. He'd go through the work expecting you to get it first time, and if you didn't understand it, then bad luck. Some students had trouble and learned differently, yet he wouldn't help them. 90% of the class had a go at him for it, and tried to help those students. He was pretty arrogant, and believed he was doing a good job, so we all got up, and went to a different area, and refused to do any work. Our class went on strike. The coordinator had a talk with our class, and then we left and went home. The next day everybody in the year level went on strike. Because of this teacher, we refused to do any math at all with him. The coordinator came back, and we had a year level meeting with him, basically saying, I know you don't like him, but try and do your best, something along those lines. The math teacher ended up leaving, and a whole different learning structure was put in place. We'd all help each other. Teachers would walk around helping each other too, so it was very cooperative. This happened with our systems engineering teacher, who was also a complete dick. It was a glorious year. TLD, our maths teacher was an asshole and didn't help people. Whole year level protested, and we now had a new learning system within the week. Sheet was glorious. I loved my year level. Probably cold bean explained better, but I'm on my phone, so whatever. Okay. So my senior year of high school, one of the English teachers gave extra credit if you presented your book report dressed up like a character from the book. So this one kid, who was a sophomore at the time, read some book where the main character dressed in all black head to toe and a full-length black trench coat. This kid, let's call him Jake, dressed like that character. Now it's important to know that this particular teacher's classroom was in a new wing of the school, and security cameras hadn't been installed in that one hallway yet. So Jake goes to the bathroom during class, but before his presentation, and there's no bathrooms in that wing, so he goes to another hallway. He's the only person in this hallway when another teacher comes up 30 feet or so behind him. To this teacher, there's some creepy tall dude roaming the empty hallways of a school while all students are supposed to be in class. Apparently, the teacher asked him what he was doing, and Jake didn't hear him and kept walking back his class. This teacher in the hall freaks out, runs to his classroom, calls the office, calls the police, because there is someone in the school dressed like the Columbine kids. So now the school is on code red lockdown. All the doors are locked, lights are off, students are hiding in classrooms, because this teacher is convinced that man in the trench coat is here to kill some kid. SWAT team arrives, and they review the security tapes. Again, all they see is a man walking down a hallway in all black and a black floor-length trench coat walk down the hall, and then disappear into the wing without security cameras, and never reappear. So they are thinking the worst. This guy must have taken a classroom hostage. SWAT assembles and rushes to the wing and starts kicking in doors, in full riot gear, assault rifles drawn, the works, so they kick in the door to Jake's classroom, and sure enough, here's their mysterious trench coat man. Jake gets tackled in front of all his peers, guns drawn on him. His English teacher is yelling that there must be some mistake. SWAT is screaming for everyone to STFU. Finally, everything gets cleared up, and they realize it was a false alarm. Jake was actually a really good student, which makes the whole story funnier. He was a cross-country star and captain, and went on to be valedictorian for his class. So at my sister's graduation 2.5 years later, she was in his graduating class. Jake stands to make his speech. He starts by saying, some of you may know me from cross-country, or band, or theater, but I guarantee all of you remember me as the kid that got tackled by the SWAT team in class. Multiple pranks over several years. Note that this was all in the era before cell phones. Yes, I'm old. Librarian was an old douche. Hated kids, always shushing us, and throwing us out of the library for whispering. Someone tipped over the library shelves, so they toppled like dominoes. That closed the library for a couple days. Someone threw an M80 firecracker into the library, shredded the carpet, and stained the glass next to where it landed with a flash of grey powder. Lots of screams. The library had all these couches and tables. When she left on break, my friends and I took all the furniture and carried them to the furthest back book aisle and stacked them up, so it looked like the furniture had been stolen in like 5 minutes. Someone flushed an M80 down the toilet, and it blew up the sewer line that was directly over the teacher's lounge. The sheet water ruined the ceiling in the break room, and I'm assuming their luncheon that day. That was prime. The school had spent $20,000 putting in established 12-foot tall landscaping bushes behind the gym. Seniors came in like a month later and sawed them off and broke into the school and stuffed them into the dean's office, filling it up to the ceiling. There were leaves and sticks laying about for hours. My friends and I found one really substantial stick and put in through the library door handles, effectively locking everyone in for about 15 minutes. Someone set a fire in a storage closet. I had failed to memorize this particular Shakespearean poem that I was due to recite in front of class in 60 minutes. I was sweating miles off on lunch break trying to memorize it when the fire alarm went off. I was annoyed until I realized the school was actually on fire and I had another day to get it done. I did not start the fire, but I was definition put in a better place because of it. My science teacher hated me. She was a feminist and a doofus to boot. Once she set her fingers on fire trying to start a model steam engine. Really stupid. We used to say all this sexist shit just to piss her off. One day, she put a film projector between my buddy and I and warned us, I don't want to hear a single word out of either of you, because we always made fun during her shitty movies. That replaced her actually teaching us anything, but she failed to properly bring the film. Yes, film. I told you I was old. Threw the projector and tie it into the take-up reel. The film fell out of the projector and began to pile on the floor. She noticed it when there was a pile about 3 feet high, about a mile of film. She shrieked at us, "Why didn't you tell me?" I replied, all cool as shit, "Because you threatened us if we made a sound during the film." Our final moment together was that she brought in a huge model rocket that her idiot husband built. I think she suffered from the delusion we were 6 and impressed by a rocket. We were seniors. We went outside into a field and she could not get the rocket to go off. So we started dragging her out. So she yelled at me to fix it, Sinky, you are so smart, etc. I looked at it and realized her electric lead had not connected. I reconnected it and backed up, said it's ready to go. She pushed the button and the rocket faking exploded like a bomb. Pieces flew everywhere trailing smoke. I'm surprised nobody was hurt. I assume she put the rocket engine in backwards and wired the charge that makes the parachute deploy, but regardless I got blamed for sabotaging it, which I did not. Didn't matter, she could not prove it, so I got the street cred for blowing up that rocket, though I was innocent. Not really legendary, but I laughed a lot during my high school years. One time when I was in 8th grade, there was this kid that was an us to everyone. Me, my friend, and this asshole all had a computer class that currently was doing student-made PowerPoints that the whole class saw. The teacher was lazy and didn't check the presentations sent to her. Well, one day after this class, me and my friend saw this asshat's computer in the hallway, and he took it and put it in his backpack. We knew it was his because of the case it had. When I asked him what the fuck he was doing, he said, "You hate him. I hate him. We all do. Skype tonight." That evening I Skyped him, and he was editing the kid's presentation. The school's budget didn't allow computers to have passwords, and I just watched. He left the first few points under shade, in case the teacher looked, and or to surprise the students. I saw him edit one of the points to the asshole's crush, and saying that he loves her as, and would come on her tigs and smear it. I was like, what the fuck, and he said the rest would be a surprise for the next day, and hung up. Kid was called up the next day completely oblivious. My friend got to school early and put his computer on the table so he could present, and sure enough first few points were fine. When the teacher then hit the next button, a loud as fuck moan sound erupted from the speakers. The point was empty except for the background gif of a cartoon girl being cumshot and faked. Class almost died in laughter, and I looked at my friend. Teachers from other rooms came in so see what the noise was. Kid got 2 weeks of in-school suspension for it, even though he said he didn't do it. That laugh that escaped my mouth that day was the most royal feeling and thing for me in middle school. I spent my sophomore year at a new performing arts charter school. Because of my sense of dress and involvement into chorus concerts, open mic night, the first choreography showcase, and the first musical theater showcase at school, lot of people at my small school, 18 seniors, that's how small, began to know me. During that year I wrote, directed, produced and starred in my own full-length original play. The entire cast and crew was comprised of students from my school. The administration would not support my play at all, and wouldn't even let it be performed at school. My theater teacher wouldn't even announce information about auditions to the class. I had my English and musical theater teachers who helped tremendously. We ended up performing independently at a professional theater in the capital that seated over 100 people. I made money via the ticket sales and decided to be the bigger person by donating 12% of ticket sales to my school, despite the administration and theater teachers' lack of support. I donated it to the musical theater department, and that money funded my school's first musical, Legally Blonde. It should also be noted that I switched schools and moved across the country, and my new school's winter musical is also Legally Blonde. How ironic. Also, somehow within the course of my 1 year at the school I earned the title School Name's Original Diva, or the original school name Diva. My musical theater teacher came up with that name, by the way. A few good ones from my high school. A Catholic prep one, all male point before my time, but coming from the math teacher who was pretty insane, I believe it's legit. The female librarian, early 80s, would go through the library before lunchtime to look for lunches. This was a pretty big library and you actually had to pull books for assignments, so your books and lunch might be across the room from you. As soon as she found one, she'd announce, "Who's Darrendy? Darrendy, I found your lunch," and guys who knew exactly where their faking lunch was would have to go get it from her. Well, someone decided to have some fun. They put the name Richard Hertz on the lunch. She found it and announced, "Richard Hertz, Dick Hertz. Who's Dick Hertz?" And all the guys in the library start screaming, "Mine does. Mine does." We didn't have that librarian when I started going there, so I think they pushed her over the edge. Point 1, I saw myself. Literally preparation for graduation. the somewhat metal head, nin patch sewn into his backpack, a few other metal pins on there, who always had his hair just the right length to not get detention. Anyway, he comes in late for graduation practice. The priest running things calls him out on it and tells him to leave because he's late. As soon as the priest turns back around, he gives him the finger. This would be all well and good except for the fact the graduating class is facing in his direction and can see this middle finger extended. About half the guys start going whoa and shit like that, and the priest, who wasn't a total idiot and was definitely a hothead, starts screaming at him, and the guy hightailed it out of there. Before the next practice begins the next day, the middle finger guy has to come up, stares just at the floor, and apologizes to the school, the graduating class, and most of all the priest. Guy looked like he wanted to die. At least he graduated. I haven't thought of him in years. I just looked him up and can't find anything. I wonder if he's mellowed out. I have a couple of stories. I apologize for formatting and grammatical errors as I'm on my phone typing this. Sheet tsunami be 8th grade me. Me and my friend D2 be excited because we have a firecracker smuggled into school. Now this fergalicious thing was colloquially known as the atom bomb, about the shape and size of a kinda joy. BD2, who was an expert with firecrackers, knows how to time the fuse like an artist. My contribution was to provide a plastic case weighed down with a stone to make it flushable. 1 minute till recess ends. We sprint to the gents' loo on our floor right opposite our classroom. Captain the torpedo tube is ready, arming the torpedo. Fire. Flush. Stroll back nonchalantly. Dieter the genius had made a 90-second delay fuse. Watch the vice principal. This guy always wore a white suit, with white shoes, with white socks and white hair. Run into the loo like it's an emergency. Be us and quaking in our boots, for we didn't want human casualties. Just mayhem. 90 seconds later. Hear whoomsh, followed by screaming from the ground floor, first floor and second floor toilets. Time slows to 10 FPS. Vice principal runs out in front of a sheet tsunami, more like a rip curl surfer. Front white suit has been dyed brown, along with hair, socks, and shoes. The atom bomb, thanks to 90-second fuse, had caused the stalls to regurgitate along 3 floors. Due to contaminated crime scene and lack of witnesses, no one was caught. Amorous ghost lady be 8th grade me and 4 other friends. We decide to stay back and catch the late bus for school sport team home. Be us planning to explore school alone and scaring each other with tales of the school ghosts. D2 talks about the crying spinster teacher who killed herself in the ladies' loo opposite our classroom. First, one would hear sobbing, then faint cries for help. Woe the kid who went and helped. Unwanted circumcision be the fallout of being helpful. Cue fake laughter from rest of us, after which we hear sobbing from the ladies' loo. B5 scared 8th grade sheetlings. Please, is anyone there? Could you call someone? I need help. I want to go home. Be us shouting for details, unable to venture into loo. PE teacher hears commotion, comes to us. He, being a man, goes into the loo to help. Not eating, I yelled out advice about keeping his night rider safe. Turns out 12th grade girl was into autoerotica using the carrot packed by her health conscious mother. Carrot snapped off in her special cavern, leaving a 2-inch carrot top inside her. Be us riding the ambulance with said girl along with the PE teacher. Dropped off the girl at the emergency room, then pulling up home in an ambulance was legendary.